guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident Podcast, a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. We are happy to have our most favorite co host, Sambaza, host and creator of the Sambaza podcast. He is a 3-time nominee for the Best African Diasporan Podcast by the APVA, and he is from the Republic of Kenya in East Africa. His podcast has been recognized by the Jollof Radio Media, and he will be a presenter at the 2024 Podfest in sunny Orlando, Florida. How are you today, Sambaza?
Hey, I'm good, Jen. How you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, excited for another episode. We do have a special guest for you guys, and we are almost approaching the end of the year. It's kind of hard to believe this is a year just really has been rolling on by. Any thoughts about that, Simbaza?
Wow. I was just looking at it. We're in December already, and
Mhm.
it was it was a true revelation of some things that I've started off personal journey that I started off in January, which is about to in January it'll be a year. Excuse me. But all I can say is that it's been great. Um, a lot has happened, and I'm happy for myself. I'm getting to the goals that I've wanted to get to. So those are my personal journeys that I've had and my revelations for the years. But I'm excited with the fact that we're still here and we're kicking it.
For sure. So, this episode will be reflecting on 2024 and talking about lessons that we learned with our special guests, and they will also share what they have going on too. So, as 2024 comes to a close, we reflect on the lessons this transformational year has taught us, from personal growth, as Sambaza mentioned, to professional challenges, and we'll share the experiences that shaped us and discuss what we're looking forward to for the new year. So, please, we're excited to have you join us for this inspiring conversation about resilience, progress, and the goals that we look forward to making 2025 even better. And so, really excited to have a special guest join us in this conversation and share about their content. As you know, we love to speak with content creators, and so our guest is a content creator. So, let's get ready to introduce our guest. Any thoughts about our guest, Sambaza?
Exceptional. That's what I'll start with. Um,
Okay.
I have been wanting the guest to be on our show, and finally she's made it. And we're ready to hear what we're ready to hear the gems that are gonna be shared today. Whatever we'll break bread with today. Yeah, I'm happy for that. Let's get started.
Absolutely. And so, again, we welcome you guys to Woke by Accident and Simbaza collaboration, where we amplify important stories that shape us and the lessons that inspire us to grow. So, today, as we're talking about wrapping up the year with this very special episode and a very special guest who is an innovative educator, founder of the Owls Education Company, and this guest has made waves in education with her dedication to staying on the cutting edge of research, leadership, and her impactful work as a educational consultant. And this year, she's added another title to the resume, podcast host of the B Word. So please join us as this phenomenal reflection on 2024, and she will share her thoughts, lessons that she has learned, and what it means to embrace growth in both the education and professional life. So, with that, we welcome Kenda Lawson.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen and Sambaza, for inviting me today and for that introduction.
How
No
you,
pressure, right?
Absolutely.
how you like
Yes.
that? It's great, right?
Welcome. So silly.
How you like that introduction? Jen does a good intro, right?
She does. She does. And it's like, dang, I don't know about gems. Like, I can give you some shiny rocks, I got you.
We'll
I got
take
you.
that. We'll take that. So, yeah, for sure.
But I want to say again, welcome to the show, Kenda. Please share a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to start the soon-to-be award-winning podcast. I'll let you tell us what the podcast name is.
Okay. Well, talk about pressure, right? Well, my name is Kenda Lawson, and as Jen so eloquently put it, I am the founder and CEO of the Owls Education Company. Basically, 15 years ago, I was in a classroom. I had a lot of success there and had a moment where it was like, turn left and, stay here comfortable and maybe move into administration, which nah, wasn't for me, or go right and not know how any of this is going to turn out, but see if you can have a bigger impact. And so, yeah, that's been a large part of the work that I've done. And so recently, within the past year, I'm obviously, I am also the executive producer of the Black is America podcast, and generally helps. I help my husband with projects as much as can, but it's always been from the background and that sort of thing. So when that word impact really it stays with me, and so every few years, it's kind of like wait a minute. Are you having the impact that you want? Like, is there a bigger impact that you can have? And so really that's a lot of what started me, got me started on this journey to starting the B Word podcast. And it's funny because I'm talking about this on Woke by accident, and it was kind of an accident. I just kind of mentioned an idea to my husband, and I'm just like, hey, I think originally it was this idea for a podcast called Breaking Bold. And it's just, I work in a very formal industry. I've always been kind of buttoned up. I come, a lot of the podcast is talking about me being a child of trauma and how that has impacted me. And so part of that was just this feeling I got that I wasn't really living authentically. I had a lot of anxiety in social situations, that sort of thing. And so basically, the idea of Breaking Bold was just that I was going to do these really like things I normally would never do that break me out of my shell. And so really the B word has been like that because I'm very comfortable on the back end, sort of producing, making things work, being a mom, that sort of thing. And
Mhm.
then to get, in front of a mic and be on, podcasts and things like that. I mean, it's different. It's definitely breaking me out of my comfort zone. But, it's been a really, really wild journey, but awesome.
Definitely. And congratulations on launching the podcast this year. That's really exciting. Like you said, you've been in the producer's chair. It's just a sit in the host chair, and it's different. It's a different ball game. So
Completely different.
kudos for taking that leap, and putting that dream into fruition in this way. I've watched or listened to so many episodes and I've enjoyed it. You've shared your personal story. You mentioned being having experienced trauma and things like that, in the way that you share it is really beautiful, and I just recommend everybody to check out your podcast. But since you've launched this year, what would you say the most rewarding part, or aspect of launching your podcast has been so far?
Really just affirming a lot of things for me. Sometimes when you're a child of trauma, which is what I just sort of broadly label it, it's like it feels disqualifying. It's like you don't want people to know things because you assume that if they knew, they it's like I'm a fraud, right? Or I don't
Mm-hmm.
belong here. And so I experienced that sort of, in business and success and that sort of thing, and kind of work through it. And then as far as the podcast, it's like you go through it all over again. And so even though we've had the success, with me in a certain role, I don't take it for granted that it's going to be successful, right? I don't, and I also think I personally feel like I started at a disadvantage. I think a lot of times when people start a podcast, it's like, all right, me and my cousins and sisters listening to it, so you can work out a few kinks and that sort of thing. But when you're married to Dominic Lawson, and he's like, as soon as you tell him the idea, and he's like, oh yeah, no, that's good, and then he's like, I only make hits. And it's like, okay, well, no pressure at all. Like, right. So it's like I go into this with eyes on it and I appreciate that. But it also is, it's a little uncomfortable, right? And so the great and really affirming, awesome part of this journey has been that it's like affirming that these stories matter to people, that it's connected me with so many people. Like so many people have sent me private messages or reached out to me in different ways and just said like, hey, I have this story that's similar to your story or your guest story, and I've never told anybody. And I just appreciate just like that sort of representation. Like we talk about representation a lot, and it's
Mhm.
usually in terms of some kind of physical characteristics. But I'm really proud and excited. I've been really proud and excited to represent introverts in this space, which
Yes.
is very interesting because you sort of you're in these rooms and you meet a lot of really big personalities, and
Mhm.
I'm an introvert, and to represent like I said, children of trauma and women and all these other great things that I get to be. And so, yeah, the B word has been just a really, really transformative journey for me too.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. And now we'll look back at 2024 as you start off. And we're actually getting to the end of 2024. But from the time you started the B word and up to where we are, um, I'm going to say we'll look at it in a small perspective and also look at yourself as a professional. What are the biggest lessons that you have learned off of starting the podcast, the B word, and also let's take it on your professional side as being CEO? Something you can give out to the people out there.
Honestly, on both, it's just you can never stop growing. And
Mhm.
that so when I started the podcast, obviously, I'm sort of used to like, hey, hey, maybe check this language, or hey, connecting Dominic with somebody I'm familiar with on LinkedIn. Maybe they'd be a great guest. And that was kind of like the sort of box I was in terms of all of our projects in the past. And so it like Jen said, like it's a really, really different experience being on this side of the microphone, right? And I think to a certain extent, I always respected what my husband did, but I did not know, I did not know the level of care that you guys put into this and preparation and all these things. And so, I've been a content creator. I can accept that label. I've been a content creator for a while, right? But it's always been educational. These things that I'm comfortable in this space, right? I've been here for, oh goodness, 20 years. Um, but as a podcaster, it's like, oh dang, man, I don't know if I accept that label because I was not prepared. I just really wasn't. I wasn't prepared. And so, I really hope the audience just kind of understands it's like, when you start a podcast, it's like your baby, and it's like you are really dedicated to like, bringing this vision to life and that sort of thing. And so it's been a growing kind of thing as far as, storytelling. As a teacher, I always talk to my students about what their superpowers are. And I think to some extent, I've always known that I was a good storyteller because, a lot of times that's how you reach kids and that's how you get through the sort of like, brick walls that we build in front of ourselves, right? And that's how you reach kids. And so, okay, great, I can do that. But can I tell a story that connects, these two dots and, somebody else's story that in a way that weaves in? And in a lot of ways, my podcast it's different because it mixes this sort of narrative style with an interview style sometimes. And so, but overall, you have to come away with this feeling that, you've been taken on this journey. And it's hard to do, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, so we're still working out kinks, still perfecting it. And so the biggest thing, terms of podcast actually both and the business is keep learning and keep growing. As far as the business, I'm in this like cool space that I don't think I ever thought I was going to get to. Because in the beginning, like you're grinding, like you're hustling, like you are knocking on so many doors and people won't even answer them, or they're slamming them in your face, or, or they'll tell you like, oh yeah, no, that's great. Come back next week. And then you come back next week and it's like, they're on vacation. So it's a lot of like really stopping and starting and, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. And so like, I think it's been in the last 2 years or so, it's been, I pick up the phone, like somebody calls and they're like, "Hey, I heard about you." And that's kind of where I always wanted to get to because everybody talks about like marketing and, you got to put yourself out there and go to all these networking things. And again, we got to represent introverts in these spaces as well. And that's just not
Definitely.
some shit that I'm sorry. That's not some stuff I'm going to do. I should have asked that one. My bad.
I know you're good.
Right. So that's just not, I'm not going to do that. Right. And so,
Yeah.
all right, okay, what do I do now? So now it's been really cool to kind of come to this come full circle. And I
Mhm.
always wanted at the beginning, it's like I just want my work to speak for myself. Like I don't want to have to do all that. And that's your thing.
Mhm.
And people are just like, yeah, well, nobody knows like what you do, or nobody knows that you're there. That's not going to work. And so now it's like years in, and it's like all of this stuff kind of paying off. And it's this new phase that we're moving into where it's like, yeah, our name and our work, previous work is speaking for us. And, I can pick up the phone call and not have to, sort of hustle and ask for work. They're just like, hey, I've heard about your work
Mm,
and we'd like your help. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah. Be
nice.
there Tuesday.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
I want to throw
And
this one thing before we go.
mhm,
I like the fact that you say, as a teacher, you're a content creator. I think that's the first time I've heard it, and I think we should appreciate teachers because you have to keep the students engaged, and they want to be in there to listen and learn something from there. And actually, you do have a following because after that, they never forget you. The students never forget you as a teacher
mhm,
for life.
mhm.
So shout outs to you being a teacher and to all the teachers out there for being content creators. Okay, go ahead, Jen. That was what I wanted to say.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I dipped my toe in the teacher space, and it is a
Come on
reward.
back, Jen.
You know, I
We need
really
you.
I've been thinking about that sometimes. But it takes a special person to even want to be in a classroom, right? And so those connections are real, and you really, can feel when you have, made an impact or someone, or maybe you've broken through a wall or something like that. Um, Share with us, and Simbaza, you kind of maybe lose my thought. But about the teaching, since you pivoted to the teaching thing, I was trying to stay on the podcast side. Okay, we're pivoting. Share about some of those lessons from being in the classroom that you can share in this space as CEO when you're speaking with educators and improving processes and things like that.
Okay, I think I got you. I can piece those together. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Sambaza. I think that has to be recognized. Like, he had to say that, and I don't want to make this a PSA for teaching or anything. Even though we do need y'all. I mean, like it's rough out here.
It is.
And you got people like me, and I'll help you, and it'll be great. But really, the reason why why there's a shortage of teachers right now, like, right, why it's so important to appreciate the ones that we have. All of this stuff is actually really it's connected.
Hmm.
So, one of the big things that like I usually tell people is that for me, teaching is one of the best professions that you can have. I think so many people have to wait until, they're really, really old. They have to wait until like maybe they never see it to know what their impact is in the world. But as a teacher, like every 4 or 5 years, there's a different group of kids that you run into them, like, just out in the world, and they're adults and they got kids of their own. And they're like, I remember you, and this, you don't know this, but they'll tell you like, you changed the way I saw this because of you. I went into this, and you're just like,
Hmm.
dang, like I don't know that other people really get to experience that. I don't know very many other professions where you get to experience that, right?
Hmm.
Like I remember I was at Wendy's and I was just really frustrated because the person in front of me wouldn't go, and I'm like, what is happening? And then all of a sudden he's like, he opens the door because the window. He's like, I thought it was you, and I'm like, okay, I don't. Looking through the rear view mirror that hard, but okay. And he's like, "Wait, I still read the news." I had this kid 10 years before that as a debate student. Um
Oh.
like somebody at my school, I guess they watched The Great Debaters and they thought, oh, this would be, fun, but we're not going to fund it or anything, but this would be cute, so you should
Hmm.
start a debate team. And so it's like, I take this group of kids and, I teach them the way I taught debate. Like I was a state champion debater, and I'm like, yeah, we can do
Oh,
this. Right. And I'm from
wow.
South Memphis. So it's like, you know, so we get on the bus and we go down to this place where they're having the tournament. It's really wealthy, sort of area. And my kids, they like I when they're on the bus, I know like if you can lose mentally before you even start, like we had lost. Like cause
Oh,
like you can see their face. They're like,
oh no.
and I was like, oh, dang it. I was so it's like, huddle up, I'm trying to give you like some kind of motivational speech, but it didn't work. So we
Oh.
go in and, the little kids at the other schools, they have like little jackets with patches on them and stuff like that. And the trophy cases with all the wins and all this stuff. And I was just like, dang. And so, okay, so we start the rounds of tournament and I would love to say like this is the comeback story, right? Like in the movies and my kids won, but like nah, we took like L after L after L after
Mm.
L that first round. And so what happened was like, and I know they were like, let's just get on the bus. Like we can go ahead and leave. We met our requirement. We competed in the debate and we could just go. And I was like, you got to finish. You got to finish. You got to finish. Right. No
Mhm.
matter how this goes, you got to finish. And so, yeah, the second round, there's this girl, and she's a nurse now. I ran into her at Target one day, and it's like, man, that was a great experience. It taught me to speak. And so,
Mm.
she was the first. She came back with the first win, and it was like it turned around after that. It was like they started coming, like she won, and then this other kid won, and it's like, and then all of a sudden, little kids with the little jackets and packages were coming over there and like, man, you guys, that was great. And so what they ended up learning, and I'm gonna tie this all together, I swear. What the kids ended up learning is that a lot of those kids that were wealthy, they bought briefs, right? So they had
Mhm.
so much money in their program that they actually paid for other people to write the argument for them. And so all they had to do was
Wow.
memorize it. And see, I
Okay.
taught my kids the old school way, also the we don't have any money way, which is you're gonna read, clip newspapers, we're gonna debate each other, we're gonna do all this stuff. And so they had arguments that weren't in the briefs that everybody else had, right? And so
Hmm.
as soon as you kind of throw a wrench in some plans or whatever, right, it's a little off. And so I always I connect that to entrepreneurship. I connect it to podcasting. I don't prescribe to what I call the mentality of lack, right?
Mhm.
That where people are kind of really, really focused on like, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this. And it's like, honestly, one of the best books I think I read as an entrepreneur was The Power of Broke. And it was really about this idea that it's like, stop thinking about like, okay, well, I didn't start with $500,000 in funding. Sometimes that is a handicap. Sometimes that makes you complacent. Sometimes there are lessons that you need to learn, and those lessons are in being broke, are in struggling, and are in all these things. And that's not to mean to say, because I had somebody, the not so fun part of this is of social media is that once anything that you do or put out get some traction, of course you got to have the trolls and all these people that are coming back on the other side and like now they got something to say. So somebody's like,
Mhm.
you don't want to glorify trauma, and it's like I do not recommend. 0 out of 10 recommend. Okay, but it's just it is a part of people's lives.
Mhm.
Honestly, even if you're not going through some of the adverse childhood experiences or aces that I have or other people have had, the brain is a really funny thing that no matter what our life is like, even if your life is great, right? Even if I got a spoiled teenager upstairs, and she'll tell people like, "Yeah, my worst day ever was when I got my iPad taken." And like that is legit traumatizing for her because that's the
Mhm.
worst thing that's happened to her.
Mhm.
And our brains don't distinguish between those things, right? Our brains see both of our worst experiences as exactly the same. And obviously, hopefully, with the benefit of wisdom, we start to understand that other people, some things like, hey, this is worse, like this is objectively worse than that. But I don't know. Wisdom sometimes is hard to come by. So anyway, point being, okay. And I lost the thread here, Jen, but I think I pulled it together. All right. Whether it's
Okay.
podcasting, whether it's business, you
Mhm.
guys
Mhm.
don't subscribe to that mentality of lack part. Like don't go around thinking like just because you don't have all this stuff that other people are starting with, that it doesn't mean that you can't start and succeed and win. So that's what I got.
Oh, that is a great lesson. That is our theme for today. Lessons that we've learned in 2024. And, even going further back, some of those lessons. And then, as we look forward, Sambaza, you want to share some lessons so we can make this a well-rounded conversation?
Oh, I already said my lessons. I wanted to go up there. Maybe the people in the chat would tell us. I wanted to
Okay,
go check them out for a minute. We want to thank you all for joining in the chat. Feel free to ask questions, and maybe you can tell us about um,
a lesson
what
you
lessons that they
learned.
learned professionally or personally as they go throughout the years. But we'll go ahead and say welcome everybody all on Facebook, YouTube, and now also on Clubhouse, where we are hosting that for a minute. We're just experimenting here and there. Ed Campbell says, "Peace and light, family. Thank you so much for joining in." And then we have a lady by the name of Crystal Johnson. Welcome to the show. Feel free to ask questions. She said, "Exceptional, name it and claim it." That was about the B word. And when you're talking about, becoming an award-winning podcast, and the podcast being award-winning,
Mm-hmm.
of him. And see her sister. I don't know what that was for, but she says here, Dominic, who is the Podfather. I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. And then we have Denise Moore, the healing session, heal, empower, and release. Welcome to the show.
Right.
Join in. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Feel free to ask. Shana Johnson says, "What's up, fam? Hey, what's up,
All right.
Shanna? Welcome." And yeah, that's what we have now. For me, what do I say? Professionally, I don't know. Professionally,
It
I'm
doesn't
just
have to be professionally.
saying. Personally, I think I've improved myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereby I've learned to be more patient with the people, kids, and other things. One thing I wanted to add, by the way, Kenda, maybe this will tie it in well. I think when we talk about you being an educator and now you have moved to a new space, which is kind of, well, you're kind of stepping into a not really new space, because you have the in between, because um, Dominic is there to help you out. So it's not like you've been in the background, but the other part of being an educator is you are teaching a different kind of people, whereby you are shaping their future. Now I think you are shaping people's um, maybe past or current or soon to be future. Things happen. These things happen, and maybe even kids will experience that when they listen to the podcast. So my thing is, you move to another space altogether, but it's still on the same content creating. It's like you just stepped up the game, maybe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the experience, it comes together in one. What do you say? It comes together in like the world goes round.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's like it's a different kind of content. It's a different medium for me,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the sort of heart of it is the same, like storytelling, connections, um, and really, like I guess transparency. Whatever we teach kids, like kids, anybody learns what we do consistently, right? And so, consistently showing up, consistently, being authentic, consistently having high expectations and that sort of thing. So it's just, that's the big part of it. So in 2020, you guys, well, this is interesting too, because I think I was talking about really the mentality of lack, and then what we really are witnessing. And I'm not going to get super political, but we wouldn't like, I don't have to be all that qualified, right? I don't have to be the best at everything. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you put out a product and people buy it. So, and so, I think 2024 has been a lot of that, it's just reflections. And I really appreciate, Jen, that being kind of the focus is like, looking back over it, what are, we can leave disappointed or upset or whatever it is about what happened, but what are the like lessons that we take away from it? So I'm really curious about, for you guys, any of
Yeah.
that this year.
What about uh, Jen? You want to go
And I was just gonna share that. No, I mean that
ladies
resonates
first?
with the. No, thank you, but no, it resonates with me a lot. Executions have been kind of a rough and jacked up year for me personally, for many reasons. But I mean, I feel like what I've learned is like how to, and I guess I'm still like munching on trying or digesting on how to deal with those, moments of loss and things like that. And then you got to get stuff done. So, like just you gotta do everything, and then dealing with, the relationships, family relationships, and, you know, things are not always a smooth sail and things like that, and just trying to process that. So, man, kind of still kind of, getting over the hump on some of that, but that's a lesson that I'm, trying to deal and when you deal with something like that, and then you got to get stuff done and you still accomplish things like, even with going through a big loss, I took some travel and I don't hardly get a chance to go anywhere. I know a lot of people like are always traveling and going here and there. I don't go, hardly ever go anywhere, but I actually went a lot of places this year, surprisingly, and it just, but I feel like I learned something from all of that. So I'm, happy for that. And I just, I can't oh, I know what I was gonna say earlier, but no. So that's the lesson. But yeah, we'll push on. Go ahead, Samantha.
I had a question with regard to your storytelling, the style of storytelling that you use in the B word. Um, Now, I'll be honest with you, and I listened to the first episode, and I haven't gone back to the next ones. I'm I'm curious about the first one that I listened to and the first one that you put out. It has a different kind of storytelling. Are you open to changing the styles? Is this what you're gonna focus on, or are you experimenting? What are we
I
looking
think
at?
I think like a lot of black women, I am expressive in ways that are interesting. And it's like if you know, you know. And so the style of storytelling matches the story that I have to tell, right? And so it just sort of depends, you know. So you'll see me jump from like, okay, telling a joke to like, and a lot of people deal with things that way, right? So it's like, yeah, in some ways it's kind of like what happened happened, right? And Jen, I don't know if you remember this, like, we met up in St. Louis, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe I was playing around with some of those ideas when we were talking about it. And um in different ways, I've watched on social media your story of play out over the last year or so, dealing with the loss, and how you're moving through it, right? And so a lot of that is kind of, so I would have an episode of the B word called bereaved, and just say like, hey, let's talk about what that looks like. Okay, Jen, yes, do you see the offer? You see what I'm cooking? Okay. But just that story, that there are times like, it's not like, okay, I'm going to tell this story. And of course, there's a story of loss. I think I tell a story. I lost my mother when I was 13, and have experienced loss, outside of that. And so it's kind of like if you think about like those moments, right? Those days where maybe you're at the wake, or you're at the funeral, or you're at the repast, or whatever it is, right? And you're just like, in this moment you're supposed to be and you are sad, right? But there might be this moment where it's like somebody tells a joke about this person and it rings so true, and it brings this moment of joy. So that there's nothing that we have to be on the B word. There's nothing, there's not a, there's not a style of storytelling, that sort of thing. The only
Mm-hmm.
requirements I have
Mm-hmm.
are that you come and you're honest and authentic. This is not going to be an ad for your business. This is not going to be,
Mm-hmm.
it's this show is about connecting with people, and that's the criteria. So
Mm-hmm.
there are moments, there are episodes that we're working on, and they're funny, like they're you know it's lighthearted, it's jokes and that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing, that's really what the B word is about. There's nothing that we have to be it, that we're all
Mm-hmm.
these things,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're bold and we're brave, and sometimes we're scared, and there are other times where I'm sad, and we have to make space for that. And so it's really just a space for that. So I'm open to it taking me wherever it authentically goes. And I have been
Mhm.
settling into, like, again, this idea of like, okay, what is a podcast? Or,
Mhm.
is it going to be this NPR style? Is it going to be like, no, none of that. It's just going to be me showing up and I'm going to tell a story. And every now and then it's like
Mhm.
my producer husband, he's like, yeah, you got to, if you're going to tell the story, you got to go and tell the story. Right. And that means like, you got to put me in that room and you have to, sort of, make this real for people, and if for some people it's going to be, I have this other person who has this same or similar experience. And it's almost like by being in that room, I'm back there, but I'm not alone. Right. I
Mhm.
have this person. And then for other people who've never experienced this, putting them in the room, it allows us to build like empathy. It's, Jen was talking about my essay on the death of reason.
Mhm.
And really, if you read it, it's really like the death of empathy. Like we don't, right? That a really big part of that, we think that, reason is just this logical, it's our brain and it's working through problems and that sort of thing. But it's really just it's empathy. Like most problem solving begins with understanding where we are in this situation, where the other person is coming from, and then moving somewhere from there. And
Mhm.
so, I don't know. I think that's what it's all about for me. And so I'm open to wherever it takes me.
That's
We have some
awesome.
comments here that
We
came in.
do.
Yeah. Ed Campbell says he admires your transparency and says this is inspirational and enlightening. And he has a personal give. He says this year has taught me how to transform more grief into gratitude. It's a process. I am making progress in it. Um, Shanna Johnson says truth and says honest and authenticity is what we need these
True.
days. And I
True.
agree with that.
Mhm.
Now, um,
Uh-oh.
oh, well, we'll ask this question. What tips do you give Black men who struggle with being emotionally present and expressive?
Okay.
I kind of like this question. Let's indulge.
Well, I mean, you've already done a lot of that by naming the things. I love that grief into gratitude.
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
love that thought process, right? And that's a hard one. Like it's so hard, and it's weird that I'm having these conversations. And I think, in order to answer your question, um, I'd say we need to have these conversations more with men. It needs to be
Mhm.
normalized in
Mhm.
all spaces that we could think of, in schools, in homes, in friend groups, in whatever. Because like I'm thinking about it, I have a 12-year-old daughter and I talk to her about that exact thing. Like, hey, if mommy had this experience, if you were to have this experience, here's what I'd like you to know. I'd like you to understand that it is okay to feel sad. I want you to feel sad. And in fact, I think I had a lot of people growing up where, people have the best intentions, right? The best intentions. But
Mhm.
I remember being told not to cry like a lot, like stop all that crying, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I internalized that. I was like, oh, and okay, not a problem then. And I think I literally went decades, like literal decades without crying. And
Mhm.
all of that is really just pent up emotions. Now, I do think that the world makes it safer for women. Not all women equally, I will say, but in general, it's safer for women. But if men want to have safe spaces, they have to create safe spaces. Like,
Mhm.
you just have to normalize it. And that means naming emotions, which, dealing with teenage boys, I understand like nobody has taught them to do that. Nobody, like there's this whole chart. And I don't think most of the kids understand that there are all these range of emotions, right? So that you're not really sad, you're grieving. There is a difference. And that helps
Mhm.
me understand how to help you. You're not really angry. You are frustrated with this process. Okay,
Mhm.
now I can give you the steps to work through it. But if all you know is mad, bad, glad, and sad, right? And I taught, and again, I guess this is me, the teacher me. I never let them use those words. Like I
Mhm.
demanded that they had other language for that. And even if that's all we can do as an English teacher, there's something else we can do in terms of history and understanding like relationships and that sort of thing. So I think we can be more intentional about creating spaces for all kids, but especially boys. Like I think
Mhm.
to a certain extent, the world accepts a crying woman and even expects a crying woman, even if they
Mhm.
don't get one, and that's not really reality. But it's just sort of the way we condition ourselves. But we kind of condition men to, sort of hold this in, not talk about emotions, and so
Mhm.
not be able to talk about emotions. And, so feel the feels. And then,
Definitely.
and I'm talking to my daughter and I'm saying, like, listen, if you ever lose mommy, understand that, not only is this normal, is it acceptable and that sort of thing, but it's a good thing. You hurting and sad means that I was loved. Right. And that's,
Mm.
I appreciate that. Right. And I'm able
Mhm.
to appreciate that now. And I want you to know that, whatever your beliefs are, um, that the family members that you love, that they are honored by your sadness. And
Mhm.
you don't have to live there. They wouldn't want you to, right?
Mhm.
But that it's okay. It's okay to live there for a moment. Or it's okay to sit there for a moment. Don't live there.
Mm.
Right.
That's a good way to
Right.
put it.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Now, we got another comment by Shanna Johnson. She says, we are taught to suppress our feelings. It does more harm than good.
Mhm.
Um, that is true. And I
Yeah.
think we're gonna go back to that one a little bit.
Mhm.
Ed Campbell says this is an episode all by itself. I think we'll probably
Mhm.
need to catch up with this one and create an episode specifically talk about this. Um, I think when we are taught how to suppress our feelings, going back to Shanna, it does more harm than good. Maybe we need to go back to our history and look at what our forefathers and what our grandparents and what our I think me as an African what we deal with. And if you have to understand your history and then try to picture it why they were telling you to do that, it's probably because if you would express some emotions, it could cause, like they say, it does cause more harm than good at that point. It was probably going to cause harm and good if you try to show some emotions, like anywhere. It's an open statement. I think if we go, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think I'm not agreeing that we should suppress our feelings. What I'm saying is let's understand, and I think that's why it needs a whole conversation to understand why we as men are taught to suppress our feelings and not show emotion. There's a point, and yes, I'd like you to jump in and then add something something
If
to it.
if I could, I
Yeah.
think I'd like to. I guess like I see you trying to put a bow on it, so I'll try to do that too. Um,
Right.
Interestingly enough, I think there's one emotion that men are like. I saw this study, right, and I read a lot of studies. But it's basically women tend to have more like physical manifestations of like trauma and emotional things, whatever. And that's particularly because the one emotion that we definitely are taught to suppress as women is anger, right? So we
Mhm.
suppress anger and we don't act it out in different, pretty much anyways, because that places us in danger, physically and whatever, right? And then on the other side, men, anger is the one emotion that we're very comfortable with men expressing. Like we're quite used to that and that sort of thing. And it's the other ones, and oftentimes that leads to more psychological manifestations of those sort of things. And so it's a kind of a weird thing where it's like we just have to sort of normalize being able to have these conversations, and that doesn't mean that we act out these things. It just means like to a certain extent, and I'm not advocating that, like we just got to show anger. No, you
Mhm.
have to be able to express, like, listen, I'm angry right now. You have to be able to
Mhm.
recognize that you're angry. Like some people don't even like that. You like, you're mad. No, I'm not. It's like, yeah, but
Mhm.
your face is flushed, your hands are clenched, and you're talking through your teeth. Those are classic signs of anger. You sure you're not angry? And then it might take days for
Mhm.
them to even realize, like, I guess I was angry. Like, that's a level of just not being conscious that is
Mhm.
dangerous. Like, that is dangerous. So it's not to say, hey, go out here and just act on your anger. but we
Mhm.
do need to
Mhm.
recognize that we're feeling angry because, and I, I'm a big proponent of therapy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So one of the things that happened like maybe 2 years ago is that I went into therapy, and it was really good for me. And I know in our community we don't really talk about therapy, and we don't, it's not
Mhm.
something that's, it's not acceptable. I think a lot of times in different spaces, but I 10 out of 10 recommend. And one of the things that my therapist was saying is like, we that lived part, right? Like not living there. Like I didn't visit anger
Mhm.
because the fear was that all that anger that was in there, it was gonna, if I tap into it, it was all gonna bubble out. And I don't know who it was gonna come out on or how it was gonna come out.
Mm.
But it was gonna, so I didn't touch it.
Okay.
I let it be there. And you know, this wasn't really a something that made the B word, but maybe 2 years ago, well, now actually, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. I started, having these physical symptoms. Jen, we've talked about this, but I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And one of the major actual contributor to that is like stress and,
Mhm.
all of these things. So for me, I know and believe that it was this physical manifestation of not being angry even when I was justifiably angry, right? Like not
Mhm.
even defending myself in situation, not feeling like I could even approach somebody who was like out of pocket, like you are out of like you are out of line, and say that
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I didn't want to be ABW. I didn't want to,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, affect these sort of relationships and that sort of thing. And then it's like, just being like, or like you know, I'm a profanity connoisseur, unfortunately. And so it's just like like let me not like let me keep a lid on it because I know there's a F bomb that's gonna pop out or something like that. But just like
Mm.
all of that, just
Mhm.
being hyper aware,
Mhm.
hyper conscious, hyper regulating, what people see. But we're not actually
Right.
regulating and dealing with like who we are and what we're experiencing and all the rest of that. So that's what I am saying, and I think
Mhm.
Shayna was saying, like, we got to be able to deal with that. Like, we got to be able to name it, claim it, and then decide what the best thing is to do about it, right? And we can't actually
Mhm.
skip to one without actually going through that process. That's what I
Okay.
learned in therapy, at least.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad you shared that. And Sabaz, before you go, I feel like I know where your wheels were turning to, and but you didn't go there. So I feel like that I knew where you were saying when you mentioned like our ancestors, the reason why they suppressed our feelings, because there's a book that speaks to this, and you may already know where I'm going, Kenda, like that post traumatic type of things that black people that we've experienced and have been taught, because and basically somebody, I feel like you were saying that if we did show our feelings, we could be hurt or harmed, and that's showing our weakness and things like that, and that's why these behaviors were done so as a like protection. But the blowback of that is you know what I'm
I
saying?
do. I mean, like
Okay.
you heard it in what I just said, right? Like that
Yes,
there's that
yes.
fear that if I tap into it, and this is like a whole other thing, not like part of it is racialized trauma,
Mhm.
another part of it is gender related trauma that I've internalized, and that sort of thing. And then the other part is like, growing up and dealing with these things, right? And so
Mhm.
the thing is like, and we're talking about these reflections from this year. I learned to trust myself this year. Like
Mhm.
that was the you know new answer. That was the thing I like. Trust yourself.
Okay.
And I always have this quote, and I hate that, sometimes I'm the biggest hypocrite because I don't always remind myself that the difference between arrogance and confidence is evidence. And so when
Mm.
we think about our history, we have all this evidence that we have so we can practice self control. We have those things, right? And so now, what does it look like to not let injustice go unaddressed because there used to be all these systematic things that are slowly, and we could argue there's a lot left to be done and all the rest of that, and it's very
Mhm.
true, but a lot of those things are dismantled, and we're in this fly in the glass jar thing, and the lid is off, right? Because we've pushed and maneuvered or whatever to get it off. But now we're kind of stuck in like, do we dare? Yes, we dare,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you can trust yourself. We've had centuries to practice self-control and bite our tongues
Mhm.
and keep ourselves safe, right?
Mhm.
And the truth is that now we've come to this place in this space that our ancestors honestly dreamed of, is okay, what if I can practice that self-control and keep myself motivated and keep that, that hustle mentality and whatever, but partner it with knowledge and collaboration and teamwork and all these other
Mhm.
things that we have not actually figured out. But there is nothing keeping us stuck there. And so, you know, I'm gonna say I learned to trust myself. That I was afraid if I tapped into anger that it
Mhm.
was gonna overwhelm me. It hasn't, right? I still
Yeah.
have I still practice gratitude, as I think Ever was saying.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
still do that every day. But also, also in this moment, no, you like, in terms of business, right? And being if I've been written off, or you go into these spaces and something like unjust happens, like I even stupid stuff where I normally wouldn't have said anything. I think I was in a grocery store this year, and just you know how it is, like everybody else is standing in line, and this is all colors, but there's always one person who was just like, I don't have to stand in line. Like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go over there. And so, like, this kid, and it's like a kid. So there's like old people in this line. They're like, there's me. I got arthritis, and so I could argue like I don't want to stand up, but we're all. The lady says we're gonna close down this part right here. So we're gonna close this part of self checkout. So y'all need to go over there. And I was the next person, and I had to go get in this line, right? 5 people back. So I'm a little hot, but okay, whatever, right? I follow directions, right? We've been conditioned, follow direction, don't be a
Sure.
problem. Okay. And so we all do, most of the people, right? And then there's these two kids, like teenagers, and they're just like, no. And they just went over there anyway. And so I'm kind of looking like, I know certainly she's about to say something to this child, And she's like, hey, it's closed. And he's like, I just got a couple items. I'm looking at my items. I got two. And there's people in this line that have one. And they're still like, no, I'm just gonna go over here and do this. And so she was just like, oh, threw her hands up and walked away. I was like, oh no, excuse me. Right. And I was like, I normally wouldn't have done that, right? But it's like, no, you see
Mhm.
all these doggone people in this line, and you're young, you can go wait. And there's lots
Right.
of people got two items. The lady asked you to move, you know. And maybe I've just got old because my I don't know. I think the ancestors, I am moving into my auntie phase, right? And so maybe that's it. Maybe I just feel like I'm gonna say something. So,
Yeah.
That's a
I mean,
good place.
sometimes you gotta put your foot down. Sometimes.
so
So yeah,
We have some comments here.
we
Ed
do.
Campbell says, "My tip is I give it a look. I take a look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of you. I love you. Do that 3 times a day, and that works." I like what Shannon Johnson says here. Emotional intelligence. That's a great word.
Mhm.
Um, and Ed Campbell comes and says, meditation, breathing techniques help cool flames of anger. True, true. Um, then Shanna says, nothing is keeping us stuck there. Wow. Yep, that's
Mhm.
good. Now,
True.
I want to go back to when Shanna said honest and authenticity.
Mhm.
I like to be honest and authentic. How does it feel working with your husband, and how has it been working with your husband? We know who he is, but tell us who he is and his credentials, because yeah, and how is it
hey,
working with?
kind of put me on the
Here we go.
spot here. I'm trying. I don't know the number anymore. I think it's 27. Okay, I'm gonna go with 27. All right. My husband is Dominic Lawson. He's the 27-time award-winning podcaster. Most of those awards are for Black 24. It's 24. Okay, I'm claiming the other three. Okay, early. All right. For the B word. So no, so okay, sorry. 24-time award-winning podcaster and producer Dominic Lawson. Most of those awards are for Black is America. It's a Black History podcast that we put on, so you can kind of see the thread of, educating people, there. But also some of them are for a mental health podcast, which ironically is part of the journey. So my husband worked for a mental health company, and I was going to these meetings, and I'm just kind of like, dang, maybe I should get some therapy. But anyway, um, yeah, working with Dominic is really interesting. But luckily, we've been working on these dynamics for a long time, because we always get this question, because it's like, you're married and your business partners. Isn't that a little contentious? And the answer, honestly, is yes. Yes, it is. But it's really, really great, and it's rewarding, because either of us could be in somebody else's space, sort of doing this work for others. And so it's really, I don't know, I think it's fun. I think it's really been really cool to do this for each other. And so, but a large part of that is, like I said, we've been married for so long and started the business together. So we kind of worked out this system, like, whose wheelhouse is it? Like, that's the first question. If it's my wheelhouse, then I'm the CEO. Like, he likes to, sort of say that, but I'm not always the CEO. Trust me. Like, I'm really not. Because, but if it's my wheelhouse, then I'm the CEO. And it's like, all right, executive decision making, and then probably some of the project management type, you know, work. And then we work together to do the like actual labor of like getting whatever it is done. But if it's his wheelhouse, then we switch roles, right? And he's the CEO, and he says, this is what needs to happen, this is what we're going to do. And then it's like, okay, we fall in line. Now there's some dynamics there, because like, obviously my husband is more extroverted than I am. I'm a little bit more conscientious. I spend more. I'm more likely to like just say like, hey, like, we're gonna do that part, and he's more careful. Like, there's all these dynamics that are always kind of, you know, doing a tug of war. But we've done, I would say, a really good job about keeping the goal in mind, and just understanding that we're both working towards the same goal, so we can't be enemies. And if we're not enemies, then we don't really need to be fighting, right? Like, we don't need to be an
Mhm.
argument. This just needs to be like, what is the metric we're going to use to figure this out? And so, we obviously, me doing the podcast and stepping sort of into his space more often, is, it created this thing where it's like, okay, he's the CEO, he's the CEO a lot now. So you get those conversations like, hey, Kenda, like, when you told this story, you kind of just rush through it, and I can hear the discomfort and that sort of thing. We can either take it out, but if you're going to tell it, like, you tell it, and it's like, all right, dang it, all right, fine, and I'll go back into the booth and that sort of thing. So it's been a learning experience, but like I said, a lot of that we worked out, just sort of building the company together. Like, me understanding sort of, where he is, how he likes to work. Um, he's loud, like, he likes to listen to the stuff with, with no headphones on. It's like, yeah, I really got to hear the music here, like, and that sort of thing. And I'm just like, dang it, I need quiet, to be able to focus on something, that sort of thing. So there's all these like different little dynamics, but we kind of learn to, exist in the same space, but go to our corners when we need to. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Um, we cannot do garden chores with my wife. That one's a no no. We cannot.
No.
No, even put a bulb together, we can't. One of us has to pick that chore. Either
Right.
me or her. We can't do it together.
I think
Yeah.
what I think what it is like, I had to learn, and we both had to learn. It's like, we always get into this idea that's like marriages are 50-50, or partnerships are 50-50, or whatever it is. But it's almost never like exactly that. Like, some days you're gonna do, it's gonna be 80-20, and it is what it is. And a lot of times it has to do with your wheelhouses. Like, I like to build stuff. I'm gonna be on Pinterest. So you talk about building, like, that'd be me. Like, oh, I saw this and I think we could do this. And let me go get my power tools. And he's like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna look at the instructions for 3 days and lay out all the parts, and like, I'm just like, let's just get started. Um, but what I learned is, again, it doesn't have to be 50-50. I can which happens a lot of times. It's like, yeah, I'm short, and it's gonna get to a point where I have to like put this thing on its legs or whatever, and I'm not tall enough to do that. I have to, like, I need your help, and I just
Right.
need you to do that. So I think it's like you start there with just like, hey, I just need in a limited capacity for you to fill this role. And because I know my husband, I'm gonna have to answer the 50 questions for you to do that role, right? But I had to learn that patience or whatever to be able to do that because I'm like a let's just jump in and get started person. And then he has to learn or accept to sometimes be pulled along by me, right?
Mhm.
A little earlier than I think sometimes he's prepared for, but oftentimes, the right call. I think he would say so.
Oh, okay. Great.
You guys could work together. Just to start with like limited capacity. I just need you to help me pick the color, right?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. Hope she hears this and we can pick on that. So, as we're looking to ahead to 2025, which will be maybe in a couple of weeks and a couple of days or so, who knows? What are some goals that you aim to achieve both professionally and personally? Yeah, let's start with that. And
I'm going, right? Okay.
yeah,
Dang, Jen, you want to jump in here? Let me think. Okay. So personally, in 2025, I would like to fully embrace. I like to embrace that sort of moniker of being a podcast, and for me, that means that I have to take some steps that I feel like are needed to show that I take this seriously because I do. That it is a big part of, I think when I first started, it was like, okay, yeah, I have this thing that I want to get off my chest. And it's kind of like, it's a journal or something, right? And it's like, okay, great. If nobody listens, nobody listens. If there's no awards for me, there's no awards. Like that's not the big thing. However, I have recognized the responsibility that kind of comes with it when there are people who are kind of looking for an episode and they're like, hey, like where's the next episode and that sort of thing. And I can't be like, oh well, I actually run this whole company or whatever, like on the side. So, so yeah, but part of that is just sort of formalizing what does that look like and being intentional about the timing and getting a production schedule and, making sure that there's some sort of consistency to that. There's a lot of projects that I've been holding on to. And so in some ways, I'm really glad I got started with the B word because I had to release it. And, so I got a book in me. I got at least a couple actually. I have just like a whole bunch of things. And so my word for this year is just release. Like release it into the universe. And it doesn't have to be perfect or in my mind, because I'm very much a Virgo, very much a perfectionist. And so I working on this book for 10 years probably, honestly. And the essay I was telling people I started writing the first time this guy was president, and some other things. So, yeah, so I have a tendency to sort of hold things like tight and dear and try to perfect them and that sort of thing. But my word for this year is release. In terms of business, I mentioned that, there's opportunities that are starting to find me. And I want to do two things. One is hold myself accountable for like self care and not over like piling a lot of things on your plate. I think when you're sometimes early on, when it's a struggle for everything, you get to this point where it's like, okay, you're still taking everything, even if it's like, okay, wait, does this actually fit with my core mission? Do I have the capacity to do this? Do I, that sort of thing. And just like settling into no's, like, no, like, no, no, thank you. Like, thank you. But that doesn't like, sort of fit or I don't have the capacity to do that right now. And that sort of thing. And I think that's true personally and professionally, just like boundaries, but also release the things that you've been holding and hold back some of the things that's been kind of freely demanding of your time and that sort of thing. So what you guys got?
me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't leave me out here by myself. I don't know if that
well,
any of that made sense.
I think
Like give the people something.
I said this before. I think for 2025, I'm going to be intentionally podcasting. I have things lined up to get ahead. Jen has provided the base for everything that's going to be going on for next year. Shout outs to you. Let me give her flowers before the end of the year. Yeah, you know, you got them. You got
I
them
think I
flowers.
got some. Yeah,
All right, all right.
those are yours. Those are
There
yours. Yeah.
you go. And I think have more fun in podcasting because there's a situation of all these first 3 years of podcasting. I think I have always been. I think the first year was kind of trying to be hard to get into all these spaces and try to get there. Then the third year, fourth year was more like experimenting, trying to see what works. And then now going into year 5 and 6, I think I'm going to be very intentional about what I do, what I podcast on. And hey, the world is still a palette. Podcasting is still a fresh palette that I just have to start painting and come off with a masterpiece. That's what I look at 2025 to be. Jen, what about you?
Love that. You're muted.
There you go. Look, I'm trying to catch the flowers. I'm still on mute. Look. Okay, I caught them, but no, look, when you said boundaries, that bells went off. So yeah,
Yes.
that's a word. And you talked about intentionally podcasting. I want to live intentionally, like intentionally live, and just whatever it is, whether it's professional moments or, podcast moments, interactions with family, interactions with friends, just really be intentional. And there's a way to get your point across without being nasty and still put your foot down and just let people know, like I'm not the one to, trifle and play with. You know what I mean? Like you can there's like
That was
a
the
way.
nicest way I've ever heard that said.
No, look, I think there's a way to say I ain't no put, a O whatever, I think you know what I want to say. There's a way to say that without, like, in my mind, I always say, what would Michelle Obama do? What would Tupac do? Like, basically, like, it's somewhere in between I ain't no punk and I am a lady. So, yeah, somewhere in between Tupac and Michelle Obama is, but I like what Sambaza said about living intentionally and then also, establishing boundaries. And basically, what this year has taught me that I need to establish that in, going ahead for the year. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping some of those lessons that you have from those first 4 years, like you bequeath them to the new podcasters, so we don't have to figure all this stuff out,
Yeah.
So I know I got Dominic to lean on, but a lot of times it does help to have different perspectives. So you
Yeah.
put some notes, one of them ebooks together or
There
something.
we go.
Hopefully. Shanna says, I ain't no punk, LOL. She likes that.
Yeah, I told you that I was fluent at this, Jen. You could have just been like, I ain't no, and I would have filled it in with 8 words. Like, I got you.
Wait.
I got
What's the
you.
2 Chain song when Mama ain't raised? No, like I
Yeah.
feel that sometimes, sometimes I do. But
I don't know. It was just cute how you said it, though. He's just like, I'm not any.
oh God.
Yeah, luckily, my face, I have my face speak for me. I can be like,
That's the face.
"See, there you go.
That
Say it
is
for
a
me."
face. That is a face.
Especially with the teenagers. That
Oh
part.
yeah, yeah. See,
Yeah.
you got to master the art of just like,
Mm.
I ain't no punk. I ain't the one.
Yep. Yep. Just
This ain't it.
right. Now,
Yeah. Oh, that's
that's the mama face.
that's it. That is it. Now this
So
is awesome.
we have gotten to the point where we're gonna let you give us your spiel, and the spiel being how people can contact you. And we're talking about everything, your socials, anything that you're doing out there. Yeah, here we go.
I've been working on this. So I'm Kenda Lawson, founder and CEO of Alice Education Company, and of course, the host of the B Word. If you want to reach out to me personally, usually if it's about business, I'm on LinkedIn. and Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. You can search Kenda Lawson. On Instagram, I am at Eat, Teach, Create. 3 of my favorite things. Otherwise, you can find us at Owls Educate, Owls LLC on pretty much all platforms. The B word is stream. You can listen on all of your major platforms. And yeah, I got a new episode just out last week, so you guys check that out.
Awesome.
There we
That was
go.
better, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Nice, precise. So with that, Jen, take us home. Oh, Jen will finish up everything. So Jen, take us home. You have the last one.
So we do appreciate you guys for joining us. We've had an engaging chat. So shout out to the chat. We appreciate all of you guys for tapping in. If you're catching this on the replay, and the audio episode will be available soon, which will be streaming where all podcasts can be found. So we appreciate that. For sure. And so we hope that today's episode has inspired and enlightened you. And if you found today's episode meaningful, please consider sharing it with someone. We would appreciate that. Our collective awareness and advocacy play a crucial role in creating positive change. We ask that you stay tuned for more engaging content, and we look forward to continuing these important conversations for the future. So, again, this has been Woke by Accident, Sambaza collaboration. And we ask Kenda to stick around for our proper goodbye. And everyone else, take care. And find the button. Oh.